Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.
The WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The superintendents of Bartlett and Germantown tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by David Stevens, superintendent of Bartlett. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Jason Manuel, superintendent of Germantown. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So we're going into the third year as independent suburban school districts, however you want to phrase that. What have you learned? Let's start with you. What have you learned?
Well, I learned that it takes a tremendous amount of work to merge a school district, demerge a school district, and then put a municipal district together. The thing that I have seen after all of that work was really just the emphasis and the ability to really focus in on a small subset of schools. You know, in Bartlett we have 11 schools, and I tell people we have a mayor and board of aldermen, and we have a school board and a superintendent that is focusing all our time, energy, and effort on that small subset of schools. And I know that us having that control over those schools and being able to really get in on a daily basis and interact, you know, from superintendent's perspective, me being able to get into classrooms and get into schools, and if a parent or principal or somebody needs to talk to somebody, boom, you can get them just like that. So it's been great.
And Jason, what have you learned? I mean, what do you take away from the first 2 years? We were talking a little bit before the show, and we've talked about before on the show, the scramble all of you had to get your school systems up once the demerger happened. I mean, the story of, you know, one person in the office with a phone and a legal pad. I mean, right. You know, you've come a long ways from that, but still, what have you learned in going into this third year? What do you think you've refined well and so on?
Well, I think for us, we're still dealing with small district challenges. We inherited a lot of deferred maintenance in both systems, and so we're still doing things like putting a new roof on Dogwood Elementary School, new heat and AC, things that were needed but had been deferred for several years. And then also dealing with the growth of a district. In a bigger district, those demographic changes where people are moving in and out are kind of, you know, levied by the size of the district. But in a small district, when people are moving in and out, it's hard to respond rapidly to that growth.
And you went through another budget season. You talked about deferred maintenance. I mean, I guess you would. I'll answer the question first that you guys would always like to have more money. I think we know that. Everyone knows that you'd like to have more. But how is that process now working or not working well with the county in terms of getting funding and being heard and so on and so forth? I'll start with you.
Well, for us, I think we're in a good state financially. We've actually built an $8 million reserve in our first 2 years, which we thought it would take us years to develop that. And at the same time built a strong reserve in our health insurance account. So we're doing well financially, but it is really those capital improvement dollars that we get from the county commission, those are drastically needed because I think we all inherited older school buildings that could use some upgrades.
Your thoughts on that?
And Eric, I think the situation we were in during all of the merger talk and all of that, the county commission kind of stopped all that capital improvement dollars. So we had been, that had compounded itself. So we were very pleased this year when dollars were released. We were able last year to put a roof on a school. We're putting another roof on. We're doing some abatement and tile work in some of the schools that had been pretty much, you know, they've been kind of neglected. And it wasn't by anyone's design. It was just the state we were in. So.
To what extent, and I'll go to Bill, but to what extent do you all, as independent school districts, the suburban and Shelby County are all going, you're through the formula of how you're funded, you are though tied together to some extent, right? I mean, and so how much do you guys court, I mean, do all the superintendents get in the room and say, hey, we want to make this ask, or are you all kind of in competition with one another for the dollars?
It's actually an ADA split, so it's based on your attendance and enrollment.
Okay.
And so we all get a piece. So whatever the funding the county commission awards to Shelby County Schools, then we get our percentage of that ADA split.
And I think that Shelby, since they're the bigger district, has driven that conversation. So, you know, we get our percentage of that
Right.
once they have that ask. But, it's pretty much, we were a subset of all of those schools, so we're pretty much all in the.
Right, but do you, I guess, I understood the split, and you explained it better than I even alluded to. But do you get with Dorsey Hobson and say, hey, what kind of money are you going to be asking for this year? Or do you just read about it in the paper? I mean, like what kind of coordination is there?
Dorsey and I still touch base and we talk. He texted me and said, we all need to get him something nice because he went down and did a great job with but we still have that good relationship. But it's I think when you look at the number of schools that are in Shelby County, their need is really what's driving that. Now, we did all go to the county commission and we met with the committee and talked about what our needs are and what what we have. So it's not like that we're out working totally in isolation.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that the county commission had asked all the districts to do was to do a facility study. So we actually hired an architect firm to come through all of our buildings and analyze and prioritize based on how quickly the roof was going to go bad, or a boiler or an AC system. So we all have done those facility studies to really justify the needs.
Yeah, and I should say too, we had invited Dorsey to be on, Dorsey Hobson from the Shelby County School System and the Achievement School District. We just couldn't work out the scheduling. You guys were nice to be here, so I should have probably introduced that earlier. Bill.
Jason, your needs in your school system your capital needs in particular, are a little different at this moment than David's needs.
Yes.
You've got the Riverdale expansion is
Yes.
underway. You've started work on that, correct?
Yes, so it's going to be a difficult year because we're building essentially a school out in front of another school. And so they were paving the parking lot today, which we desperately need when the teachers come back. But yes, so we actually had 22 portables at Riverdale Elementary School, and they've been there for 20 plus years. And so working with the city of Germantown, they have actually funded us to remove those portables and put a middle school addition in front of that campus. But we've also added 12 portables, 6 at Dogwood and 6 at Farmington to deal with our student growth. So we have elementary school growth issues in our district.
So I know you guys always have to be thinking ahead, much further ahead. After Riverdale, then what happens to the discussions that have happened about a new school?
Yeah, so for us, the Riverdale expansion really deals with our middle school population. If we look at how many middle school students we have, we can't fit them all into Houston Middle School. So we probably have 1,300 middle school students, so we really have room for about 400 in that Riverdale expansion, and the remainder go to Houston Middle School. Now the issue is the elementary school numbers, so that's why we were in conversations with Shelby County Schools, still in conversations, to try to get Germantown Elementary School back for students to serve our population.
Right, and Superintendent Hobson, I think, wanted that separate from the budget considerations,
Yes.
And now we're past the budget considerations, and he said, and you've said, okay, let's continue to discuss this.
To have that conversation. But at some point, we have to look at other options. We know that we have to essentially travel 2 paths. Trying to get Germantown Elementary, Germantown Middle School from Shelby County Schools, but then also at the same time looking at building our own elementary school, because there's a short period of time that we can actually house our students in portables before we need a new elementary school.
How do those conversations go? I mean, are you formally sitting down with lawyers, and is it a negotiation? Is it more of a casual conversation? I mean, who all is involved, and how is that conversation going to happen, do you think, now that we're through the budget season?
The first touch was with me and Superintendent Hobson. I actually reached out to him and said, I have a plan. We've identified schools that are around that area. Oak Forest is one that's a mile and a half away from Germantown Elementary that has about 450 students in an 850 student school. Okay. So it's not a matter of them having to rebuild, build another school to serve their students. They could reroute those students.
And that's a school in the Shelby County system?
And that's a school in the Shelby County system. So we've really developed a plan for them. Then the next step was with the mayor and the city of Germantown to reach out and say, here's the money that we're willing to offer to buy those schools. And then from that point on, it's for them to negotiate the funding.
If you're in a grocery store, and I don't mean this flippantly, if you're in a grocery store in Germantown, what are the chances someone's going to ask you about those schools? Is it every time?
It's not every time. It's pretty common. I think at the beginning, there was a lot of concern about what would happen. But I think that people are happy in our schools now. So now we've actually seen the flip side is, are we going to have to rezone our district? What happens when we do the rezoning? But yes, there is a question about what are we doing with our elementary school growth.
Yeah. Bill, back to you.
David, talk about Bartlett's capital needs, you talked about some roofs someplace, some improvements.
Right.
What are your needs on that?
We were in a little different boat than Germantown, where we received all the buildings but not all the students. Now, where we have an excess number of students is 9 through 12. So we created our Bartlett Ninth Grade Academy, which will be starting its third year, and things have gone great there. But we are now looking, we have just, the board last night approved a contract with Fleming and Associates to come in and look at our high school. We've been putting together a master plan of what that campus is going to look like over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and looking at phasing that in. So that work is going to be taking place this fall, and we hope to have something to talk to our board about, because we have to look at, you know, we're projecting to be close in the next couple of years to 3,000 students. So is that campus able to hold 3,000
just at the high
well,
school?
9 through 12. So
9
we
through
have
12.
over 700 this year that will be at our ninth grade academy. So that is a challenge that we're going to have, where we have plenty, you know, our space in elementary where we have a lot of open enrollment students and we're able to have those facilities used. But we are going to have some challenges down the road as we look at that, especially our high school campus. And then at some point, if our growth comes in and then we need to turn the academy back into a middle school, now what's that going to look like? So we're really trying to be proactive. We've had these discussions for the past year and a half to two, but what we have always said is, in our situation, since it wasn't mission critical at the moment, we wanted to get operational before we become aspirational. So now we feel like we have a good foundation, it's solid. We're ready to move forward now and look at that high school campus and see what it's going to look like in the future.
And once you get the view on this from Fleming, then I take it you begin looking at, beyond that too, is it adding a building to the campus there? Is it a new school? Is it a...
Right, because that building has multiple buildings, like where our office was built in 1963 is the old elementary school. Then the next building you would have was built in the 70s. You have a building that was built back, the auditorium was like back in 1920 was when that auditorium. So we need to go in, and we've done some initial evaluation of that, but they really want to go in now, look at those facilities and say what building needs to be renovated, what building may need to come down and a new building rebuilt, or what new construction needs to happen. And I think we're going to be in a great situation where we can phase this, do this over time, and with those dollars, those half-cent sales tax that the city has been banking, the hope is, in discussions we've had with our mayor, is that as we look at these phases, that we really wouldn't have to go out with a big tax increase or big bonds, that we could do this in phases over a number of years to see how it works.
So you could do pay as you go.
That's our hope, to look at this and see. But I think what's going to happen is this master plan is going to inform that, to see exactly what do we need and what facilities are adequate and which direction we need to go.
You talked about the ninth grade academy, and I remember going out and talking to the leaders of that effort. It was academic as well as meeting some space needs there. How has that worked out? Are you getting a different kind of ninth grader coming out of that and into the high school?
You know, it's interesting. My daughter, who was a ninth grader last year, when we first started this discussion, she looked at me as a seventh grader and said, "Dad, I don't want to go to a ninth grade academy. I want to go to Bartlett High School." This year, she said it was the best thing that she'd ever seen. From her perspective, the teachers we talked to, they say it's like working at a small private school. You have 700 kids in one standalone building with counselors, administrators, teachers. Those students are able to develop leadership roles, because instead of them coming in as ninth graders and being the bottom man or girl on the totem pole, now they can come in and be the SGA president and the student body leaders. So, you know, it worked well. Space was a need, but also we looked at that social, emotional, academic, all of those impacts. That ninth grade year so many times is where you lose students from middle school to high school. They go from that middle school where it's pretty much a regimented, rigid way they deal with teenagers, to all of a sudden in high school you have the same freedoms and responsibilities that a 17 or 18-year-old senior would have. So it has been great. It was something that when we first did that, we were saying, we're not sure how the community is going to embrace it, but everywhere I go, people are saying it's the best thing that we could have done. So it's worked out well.
For you, Jay, it's interesting to hear you talk about, you know, things that you did for space, but also just this is a program that we want to explore, which again early on you couldn't do because you guys were scrambling so quickly, everyone involved to set these school districts up. separate from the things that people like me always ask you about, which are the 3Gs and what's, funding and so on. What's maybe an equivalent thing you've done that you've, over the last couple of years or introducing this year, that is different, that you're able to do because your staff, after a couple of years of listening to parents and looking at the board, hey, we want to change this. Academically, we want to do this. Not because we have to, not because of demerger, not because of the 3Gs, but because we've looked at this and this is a change we want to make.
Well, for us, one of the easy ones was our orchestra program. We used to have orchestra at the high school and at one of the middle schools, and so we expanded the orchestra program to be at both Riverdale and at Houston Middle School, and then we pushed it down to our 5th grade level. So it's part of their curriculum, and through their music class that they get orchestra classes. They can choose to take that. So that's exciting. So they have this continuum of being with the same teachers in the system. So it's really blossomed. And for some parents, it's really special to see their senior in high school on stage. We have a big concert at the end of the year playing with their 5th grader in the same moment. It's really special.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the trend nationally is arts and music programs are being cut in public schools, right? Not added, not expanded.
And for us, we see that as being the wrong philosophy to take. It engages students and makes them think about life differently.
Right. I think that you all just you're adding more laptops or electronic devices.
And I think it's true for Bartlett too. So we have a 4-year plan to do a one-to-one initiative. And so all students in grades 6 through 12 will have a MacBook Air. And it's not just supplanting textbooks for technology, it's how you use it in the classroom. The teacher can teach completely differently if all the students have devices. So for us, we are going to be on our year 2 and a 4-year plan. So all 8th and 9th graders will have devices that they're taking home with them.
Yeah, your technology for you all?
Yeah, we 3 years ago when we started the academy, we had a pilot group that we used iPads with about 250 students. And we learned a lot of lessons from that. So last year we went in and every 6th through 9th grader received a MacBook Air. We looked at the cost of the iPad and what you can do as far as being able to create on an iPad, and the laptop was much better. So this school year we're very excited that we will be 6 through 12. Every student will have a laptop. And I tell you, we had 3,000 devices out in the hands of 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 9th graders.
Scary. As a parent of teenagers, that's scary.
The first few months, I didn't sleep at night. And, my daughter had hers, and it was amazing to see her come in, get her laptop out, sit on the couch, and start doing her homework, where it used to be, you need to go into the kitchen table and sit down with your textbook and do that. But the students, our teachers have had laptops for years. The damage and the loss was greater among our teachers than our students. In fact, out of 3,000 devices, we only had 2 come up missing. And those were situations where they were in a parking lot somewhere and they left it in a book bag and somebody broke into the car was left open, took the book bag. But we didn't have any come up missing at school, and we were.
I think we've talked about. I know I've talked about it with one or both of you on the show. Technology in the classroom. It's a big issue, and more studies of coming out, and certain studies have come out. And I think I've talked about this before. And my wife's a teacher. That some things aren't better on a laptop. Some types of reading retention and note taking is not as good. A pen and paper in some cases is better. What's your philosophy on that in terms of the appropriate role for a computer? Because there was a certain point in time where everyone thought, we're getting rid of the books, we're getting rid of the pens, and we're getting rid of the paper. Everything's going to be on that laptop. I don't think everyone believes that anymore.
No, and I don't think that should be the philosophy, because I think that it is another tool, just like our textbook is, to really engage students. And I think for us, it's how are we reaching them? How often do our students, immediately go to their cell phone or go to the computer to engage with the world? And that's one way for them, but that doesn't change, just like Dave was talking about, the social emotional side of things. A lot of what you need to do is have groups of students that are working without a device in front of them so that they are engaged together on a project. I think for me, it was more special to see the home side of things. My son was also in a one-to-one cohort, and so I could see him working live, building a PowerPoint with other students where they're actually adding the slides and they're all at their own houses developing this project. So I think it's a balance to make sure that we're doing all the above.
Your thoughts on technology, because it's a big issue within the academic world, right? I mean, that some people who just thought this is the solution, and there's some research that says people don't retain. Same with a Kindle or an e-reader, that the retention is just not as good for some people.
Right. Well, the computer will never take the place of the teacher. I mean, the most important thing that we have in our buildings are great teachers, and Jason and I, we talk about that often. But I look at our elementary students, and what we have done, we haven't gone to a one-to-one at that level. What we've done is been able to repurpose the devices that we had at our high school and middle school down, so it's a more technology-rich environment. But I think that in that elementary, with those foundational concepts and skills that students have to learn, we don't want the computer to take the place of that teacher, nor do we want it at our middle and our high school. But that's why we thought sixth grade was a good place to interject the technology. And as Jason said, it's another tool. I mean, this is a blended model that we're all doing. It's not that we're handing a kid a laptop and saying, go sit in the corner and get this. It's a tool. Just like back when I was teaching, we used to have overhead projectors and chalkboards.
Yeah,
So.
let me ask a quick question, and this sounds really obscure, but it's actually, again, because of my wife, I know this is a big debate. Do you all still teach cursive? There's a big debate on this, right?
And that had been added. They took it away for a while. My youngest daughter actually missed cursive in her instruction,
son
but
did too.
they added it back into the state curriculum, so it is a standard now.
Yeah,
Right,
same for you.
yeah.
And you like that? You're glad?
I think
As
it's
educators?
important.
I think so. Well, because if you can't write it, it's going to be hard to read it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
No, it's
definitely
a
an
really
issue.
interesting thing. People who can't read it, anyway, it's interesting. Bill.
So last school year, we went through 10 Ready, which was pretty much an ordeal, I think for everyone.
This is the state testing.
Yes.
The state achievement testing. So the Commissioner of Education for the state has said not only do we have a new vendor, but we're going to take a new look at how much we test, when we test, what the testing window is. What are you all telling the state about that?
Well, I think we're the good thing about the commissioner, she's listening. We're able to have opportunities where we can talk to her, and that's one of the things as we've had our listening sessions. We were up in Jackson last month with the commissioner and her staff, and we talked about the amount of testing. We want to find out what our students know, but that the high stakes testing, it's like so many things that we've done in education. It's at one point we didn't know how our kids compared to other kids from across the country. Well, so we swing it way back, so it was almost, we were just constantly testing. So we feel good that they're backing that up. We feel like that they've been thoughtful as they've looked through the way we're going to do online. The thing I can say from Jason's perspective, all of us, from Shelby, we were all ready for the online test. We had our infrastructure was there. It was just the vendor was not able to get that many students on at once with their server capacity. So we think it's smart that we're backing up, re-looking at this, and I think it's good that the commissioner is listening to superintendents and teachers and principals and practitioners and parents to really make a good decision for what's going to work in Tennessee.
And I'd like to see even more of a reduction than what they're doing.
In the amount of testing.
In the amount of testing. They've gotten rid of they had a split test where they had a set of tests in February and then at the end of the year in late April and May. So they got rid of that earlier test date. But at the high school level, I would like to see them go to the ACT suite. I think if that's going to be the measure that students are going to use to get into universities, and we have universities who are giving full rides, scholarships based on your ACT score, then let's use that test. It has a math component, it has a science, a reading, and social studies component to it. Let's use that as the measure.
Starting in 9th grade, 8th grade or something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And there are suites that I think they removed testing in the wrong areas. So we used to have a plan and an explore test in middle school, and then when you were a sophomore in high school, you would have that. It's a pre-ACT practice test. They removed those tests in order to eliminate some testing. But for me, that was a very valuable test to see how prepared students were. I would like to see those become, the rule of the land, and they have an Aspire suite now that we can actually use for those tests. And I'd like to see that become what the state is looking at.
I think most of us who aren't in education think of the ACT as being a number score, but it has the kind of data that you can look at that goes beyond just that number.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, and there's been a pretty big outcry of many of the superintendents. I agree with Jason. ACT is kind of the gold standard. When you think of the ACT, it's not something that you think somebody's trying to indoctrinate your kids, or with all the discussion with Common Core and 10 Ready and all that. Because as Jason said, a student that scores a 22, 23, they're looking at really an opportunity with the Hope Scholarship of getting into college, and with what Tennessee Promise is doing with the lottery scholarship. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the issue that we're finding is that the new standards that we have developed are not totally aligned with ACT. So I think that's what's causing the state some quandary, that we were with Common Core standards, now we've moved to Tennessee standards, and they're trying, we always have said we want whatever the standard we're going to teach, the assessment needs to align. So
Right.
there probably has to be some work there, but I agree, I think ACT would be a great opportunity. And I do agree that we have overdone the testing. We've swung that pendulum way back.
Just a minute left, so not enough time for this, but what about kids who, and there's an interesting discussion nationally and folks locally about kids who really aren't going to go to college. And then that's okay. Or maybe they're going to go to trade college, or maybe they're going to go, I mean, not everyone's going to leave high school and go to college, and not everyone necessarily should. I think Hillary Clinton said it in her acceptance speech, or nomination acceptance. Your thoughts in Germantown on kids who aren't going to go to college but might go into other sorts of programs or go straight into the work world?
And I think this is one of our goals for all of our districts, is to provide an opportunity for all students. And so that's why you have a developed vocational education program. So we know that we can give students skills that they can take to go through a community college and then move on straight to employment. And I know you've
Not
done a
enough
lot of
time,
work
but
there.
just
Real
10
quick,
seconds, maybe.
what we've done in Bartlett, we have a partnership with the medical manufacturing device community, TCAT, and our advanced manufacturing around medical manufacturing, where our kids are getting college credit through TCAT,
Right.
and they're getting experience.
Right there. I apologize.
same
Not
time.
enough time, but thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.